everybody, and welcome to episode 122 of the Self-Publishing Roundtable, the podcast for indie authors by indie authors, where we discuss today's topics and issues that matter to the business of the self-published author. I am your moderator, Wade Finnegan, and my co-panelists for this evening are Xavier Granville.
Buongiorno, internets.
And yes, it's true, 2 weeks in a row you can see him, Liam Kingman.
Howdy.
No big deal.
Whatever.
Erica had to be off this evening, but hopefully she can catch this episode later, and we wish her well. Tonight's special guest is Chris Fox. Chris, you might know him, at least from our audience, as a nonfiction author of writing books such as 5,000 Words Per Hour and Lifelong Writing Habit. But he is also a fiction author himself, and he's got a release coming out in about a week, so we'll talk about that. But of course, most of our listeners want to pick his brain about how the heck do you write so many words so fast. So welcome, Chris Fox. Thanks for coming on.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, again, thank you. It's I'm really interested to hear some of these tips and stuff and all the things going on, and we'll probably hit a little bit on the marketing too of your new book coming out and stuff like that. So I'm just going to remind everybody watching live, make sure you leave us some questions for Chris, comments. We'll try to get them on the air for us, and when we're all said and done, go leave us some reviews. Also, maybe if you're willing, give us a little holiday cheer. We got a donate button on the site that help to keep the podcast going. We appreciate everybody. Love our live viewers. Love all of our viewers, but our live viewers make it really interesting. So please leave your comments. All right, so Chris, let's just go ahead and start off in case some people don't know who you are. How'd you get started in the writing gig and how journey to tonight?
Sure. So I started writing when I was a little kid, believe it or not, age 6, and knew as a child that I desperately wanted to be a writer. In my Gifted and Talented program as a teenager, I had my first short story published, decided, yeah, this is definitely what I wanted to do. That lasted all the way up into my early 20s when I started getting traditional short stories published with various magazines and realized they don't pay me anything and they keep all my rights. So that sort of, dashed my dreams against the rocks. I said, I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I don't want to write novels and then have them take it away for a pittance. So I kind of gave up the dream for a lot of years until self-publishing came around, and then I jumped in with both feet because I realized, hey, we can create the worlds that we want to create and get paid doing it.
Nice, yeah. It sure has changed a lot of people's attitudes about writing, which is great, which is really, really great. So let's start off a little bit with the nonfiction side. And actually, this little pre-show story you were sharing, you kind of got bullied into this, but this book, 5,000 Words Per Hour, has been a lot of talk, right? It's been a lot of talk around the self-pub indie community. So tell us a little bit about that and how that all got going.
Sure. So it's a very loaded title, obviously. 5,000 words per hour is extremely difficult to achieve. A lot of people aren't even sure that it's possible. It's almost 85 words a minute sustained over an entire hour. So it definitely takes a lot out of you, even if you can reach those numbers. And often it takes voice dictation to get there. But the book came about when I said I was bullied because I was in a couple of different online writer communities, and we would do writing sprints where we would all start writing, let's say, it's 7:04 right now. At 7:10, we're going to kick off a sprint, and for 30 minutes you write as fast as you can, and at the end of that you come back and you post your numbers. And so we were doing that consistently, and my numbers were way, way higher than most of the other people that were posting. So they started asking me how I was doing it, and over time I started writing up little blog posts for them, and they suggested kind of gathering those together and making a step-by-step process to show writers how they could achieve exactly the same thing I was doing. And before I knew it, I had a book and went ahead and published it, so sort of by accident.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, that was a good fortune for you. Those people were picking your brain like that, because like I say, it's been doing really well. I know I see it a lot in lots of different areas on the internet. So I mean that's a good sign. So Xavier or Liam, if you want to jump in with a question here, you can. Or I got some. I should have done my pre-show, but want to make sure you guys, especially Liam, you got to use your good internet connection tonight.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. So I'll jump in. So How do you go from like a low word count for like 100 words a day to 5,000?
Incrementally. So the first thing that the book talks about is micro sprints, and the idea is you're only going to write for 5 minutes. So you set yourself a little timer. I have a free app you can use to do that if you have an iPhone or an iPad, or you can just use the stopwatch on your smartphone. You start the timer and you write for that full minute or for that full 5 minutes without stopping. You don't allow yourself any interruptions, and before you're going to sit down and do that writing sprint, you want to know what you're going to write. So take, let's say, 2-3 minutes, write a paragraph, plot out what scene you're going to write for that little micro sprint, and then write it out. And I think every writer can find 5 minutes in their day to write. And when you first start out, maybe you're only getting 150 words during that 5 minutes, but practice is something that your brain is really designed to capitalize on. And the longer you do something, the more efficient you get at it. So if you were to just do one 5-minute writing sprint every single day for, let's say, a week, you'd probably double your word count if you did nothing else.
I actually kind of stumbled upon like your method some time ago. I picked up your book earlier this week and started reading through it. I haven't had time to finish it and everything, but I work in a call center, and I was working the overnight shift, and I was writing between calls, so it might be 5 minutes or 10 minutes between a call and the overnight shift, and I was knocking out the words that way, and I was hitting 5,000 to 6,000 words a day that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise just by doing those little sprints like that. So it definitely worked for me. And I'm interested to read more of your book to see more of your little tips from in there.
Yeah, thank you. For those who haven't read the book, what Liam's saying is really funny to me because I was in a call center when I first started writing, doing these micro sprints. So when you've got that 2 to 3 minutes between phone calls, I started using that to write as well, and that's kind of how I really got into this. So totally by accident, but you start training your brain very quickly where you're like, I have no idea how long I have until the next phone call comes in, so I'm just going to write full tilt until it does.
Yep.
And do you prescribe to the idea of like stopping mid-sentence and picking back up type of thing? Do you do that regardless of a call's coming in or something?
I do. So it does. Interruptions are pretty catastrophic, and the more frequently they happen, the harder it is for you to get back to what you were doing before. But the more you practice it, the easier it gets. So you'll very quickly get to a point where you can pick right back up where you were.
That's interesting. So what does your writing routine look like when you're in the midst of a novel?
It's changed a lot as I've gotten more time. In the mornings, what I'll do is I'll go to the gym and I'll work out for an hour. And while there, I've just got some headphones on. I'm listening to music, usually trailer music, thinking about what it is I'm going to write that day, planning out the scenes, rolling the mover projector in my head. And then when I get home, I'll write in 2 or 3 30-minute sprints, depending on what my word count goal is for that day. And I'll usually take 5-minute breaks in between those sprints to, sort of course correct and look at what I'm going to write for the next half hour. And usually at the end of those 3 30-minute sprints, I'm sitting on top of between 5,000 and 6,000 words.
Okay, that's pretty efficient. You get a lot done there. So how many times have you actually hit 5,000 words in an hour? Have you ever kept track of that?
I do that at least twice a week. My average right now is about 4,300. It's still slowly creeping up, but it's interesting because depending on what time of day I write, that average changes. So if it's in the morning and it's a scene that I'm really excited about, that's when I hit 5,000 words. If it's something that I'm less excited about, or maybe it's late in the afternoon, I've had a long day, maybe I drank a little bit the night before, then that's going to plummet closer to 3,500.
That's right. So your brain algorithms almost have to coincide in order to be peak efficiency.
Yeah, we're a lot like batteries in that regard. You've got a certain amount of energy and willpower every day that you have that you can work with. And if you're spending that on other things, and let's say you write towards the end of the day, you're going to have less energy to put into that, and you're going to churn out not only less words, but lower quality work, in my experience.
Brain algorithms, kids. Brain algorithms.
Xavier, go ahead. Keep going with that thought. Our next question.
Erica had written a couple of questions down, so I'll go to what she has. Is a gun-to-head approach involved in getting that 4 to 5K an hour in?
Initially, yes. I respond very, very well to deadlines. My day job that takes me 50 to 60 hours a week is at a startup. And so what they do is they give us completely unrealistic deadlines, and you have to do everything in your power to hit those. So I started putting up pre-orders for my books before they were written. And I know that I have to get a certain number of words written, get it off to the editor, get it back and edit it before I can get it out there. And so there's a lot of frenetic energy when you realize, oh God, if I don't hit this, I'm going to get banned from pre-orders for a year.
Yeah, that's pretty bold.
Yeah, so far so good, knock on wood.
So what else motivates you? I mean, just to do this, because you talk about writing every day too, as well. So how do you make yourself do that?
In my old age, I've slowed down a little bit. I was doing 7 days a week for probably the first 6 months I was at it. Now I only do 6. I take Sundays off. What I found is that I really enjoy storytelling. I was the kid growing up who played Dungeons and Dragons and all the other role-playing games. Loved being the GM. Loved diving into my own worlds. And so I've kind of stockpiled a whole bunch of stories I want to tell. So it's really easy for me to sit down, get into the plot that I want to write, and just get into that flow state where I'm not really thinking about the process. I'm just excited about getting it out. And the reader feedback you get afterwards when you publish a novel and you have people that are writing to you saying, wow, this was amazing, when is the next book coming out, this is such a unique take, et cetera, it's really heady, and it keeps me writing.
So how many fiction books do you have out now?
At present, I have a trilogy and a prequel novella in what I call the Deathless Saga. And
is the goal to make this your permanent job, or are you going to stick with the day job and just write on the side?
February 1st is the goal. So I have a very lucrative software engineering job. I'm an iOS developer for a startup in San Francisco, and I've let them know we're working on a replacement. I want to do this full time. I made enough money in 2015 that I could have supported myself from writing, and that's growing. So 2016 is the year. I'm going to find a replacement, get them trained, and February 1st, I write off into the sunset.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Now, do you laugh maniacally when you do that?
I'm still working on my maniacal laughter. It's not very good so far.
Maniacal laugh.
That's awesome. What kind of outlining? We've had a lot of guests that talk about making beats. You talked about when you're sprints, you write a little paragraph. But how much outlining do you do ahead of time, and all that sort of stuff? What your setup is?
I typically do a paragraph for each chapter, but I do a lot more big picture thinking first. So one of the next books that I'm putting out is called Smart Plotting, which will explain this process in depth. But I start with 3 core things: a kick-ass ending, a kick-ass main character, and a super awesome villain. Those are the 3 things that you've got to have: that protagonist, that antagonist, and an ending. And then I go all the way back to the beginning, and I sort of plot my way back forward to figure out how did they get from the entry point in my story to that kick-ass ending that I want to put together. And I'll write 1 to 2 paragraphs for every single chapter that's going to lead them up there. I typically follow a standard 3-act structure, and once I have a rough outline and I'm fairly happy with it, I just go back to chapter 1 and start writing it out.
Nice. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Now, how that sounds all well and good, but how do you do that every day, or 6 days a week?
I think that's a product of years of being a gamer. So those of us that grew up playing Dungeons & Dragons have a huge, huge advantage over people who did not. Because if you were the GM, you had to come up with an entertaining adventure for your friends for 5 to 6 hours every week. And you had no idea what they were going to do, so you had to think fast and improvise and kind of start figuring out how a story was supposed to flow. And I did that for 25 years before I started writing novels.
Yeah,
so for me to do this,
you know your way around a D20.
Yes, I do. Yeah, so that I think really helped me get to a point where I can do this consistently. And sooner or later, I'm going to burn out and need to take a break. I think that's true of everybody. You get to a point where you will break down, but I've got at least a couple more years before I'm going to need to take an extended vacation, I think.
Well, speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, I guess it seems like with most of the books that you have out that are in fiction, anyways, are more along seem like the paranormal, sci-fi-esque. Do you have any things in the works, like you said, like banked fantasy scenarios that you're going to be later on putting forth as novels or series? Blah blah blah.
I do. So, like every gamer on the planet, I have an epic fantasy in me that I wanted to get out there. But I figured before I started on that, I needed to learn to write good books. So I think I'm finally at a skill level where I can tackle that, and I start that at the end of 2016. I'll have 3 books ready to go, and the setting is called Shattered Gods. So I'll be rolling out the first 3 books in that. It's fairly standard fantasy, little dash of steampunk in there. Dead gods are scattered across the world. Their bodies are still there, and anybody who goes to them can risk their lives to steal some of their magic, and that's where magic comes from in the world.
Cool. I like it. Good world. That sounds like good world building.
Yeah.
Now, do you write down a lot of that world building, or is that just like you're saying, with just in your head and you just let it kind of percolate?
I generally write out a lot of it. So for Shattered Gods, I have a whole Wikipedia extending back a couple decades. For Deathless, which is more recent, I have a couple 100 pages of notes that are organized in Scrivener.
Okay. Yeah, note to self, maybe need to do more planning.
It can be a lot of fun, but it's also, I think, hard to sustain the pace you need to crank out novels if you're doing a lot of planning. So No Such Thing as Werewolves, the first book in the Deathless of my first novel, took me probably 2 years of research from everything from neuroscience to helioseismology, learning about the Cro-Magnon and all the things that were going to go into it. But once I had done all that work, I can now crank out novels in that setting because I understand how the universe works. If I were to migrate to some new setting, I'd probably have to do another year's worth of research to get ready for it.
Wow. Okay. That is pretty extensive. So, what are some other things that you would suggest that people, say newer writers, start doing to be able to produce words on a regular basis? What are some of your checkpoint lists?
So the first thing, again, is to write every day. Set up just a single 5-minute sprint. Make sure you do that. If you're doing that every day and you only get a couple 100 words, you're going to start building consistency, and you'll start instilling a habit in your brain. Your brain will expect you to write at the same time in the same place every day. The second thing I would recommend is to cut out all distractions. So what a lot of writers will do is you'll have your email open, you might have an internet browser open, and you'll allow yourself to respond to things that come in which will distract you from writing. When you're writing, you need to turn off the internet, close your email, shut your phone down, get rid of all distractions, and erect what John Cleese called a tortoise enclosure, which is explained further in the book. It's a way for you to set up kind of a playpen for your creative mind where you can come out and write and be as free and creative as you want without interruption. And just setting that up is going to double or triple your word count.
Now, do you think it works better for nonfiction or for fiction with like the higher word counts and the sprints and everything?
I think each is a different skill set. I find that fiction is harder to plan but can be faster to write. I know nonfiction authors who can just crank it out and are faster than me in that regard, but most of them have written quite a few books.
And piggybacking on that, how do you balance like the age-old quality versus or quantity versus quality?
This is the beauty, I think, of allowing your brain to sort of take over and getting into that flow state. If you think about the very best scene that you've ever written in your life, did you write it really, really quickly, or did you agonize over every third word and rewrite sentences, 12, 14 times?
Yeah, it's definitely faster. Like doing the sprints and everything when I've got my most productivity times going, you get sort of like in a zone where everything kind of just fades away and like you're focused on that scene, and you do end up writing faster. And I found the stuff that I've written has been a lot more concise and tight from it.
Yeah, I'm going to go brain algorithm on you for a minute there. So here comes the geek speak.
Hashtag brain algorithm.
Yeah, so that's neuroscience at work. When I studied neuroscience for No Such Thing as Werewolves, I learned some unexpected things. The way your brain works, you do get into a zone. Your neurological patterns will change. So if you have an EKG hooked up to your brain and you sit there and you start writing and you get in the zone, you get in that flow state, they'll see your brain's patterns change and they'll realize what you're doing. They can actually track this process. So by writing every day and following the steps in the book, your whole goal is to trigger flow state on command, to get into that creative zone where all of the mechanics of writing fade in the background and all you're doing is creating and doing what you love.
That sounds amazing.
Well, and I do find the times that when I am kind of totally not thinking about word count and totally just immersed within the act of writing, I am also writing the fastest. It's like that Bruce Almighty clip where he's just like slowly attacking the keyboard with his hands, you know, just like you start off slow and there's that trickling, but it's speeding up and then suddenly it's mayhem.
Yeah, if you're doing it right, what I found is you can have both quality and quantity at the same time.
Krishan on the website asks, how many days of the week do you use to plan and plot your novel? Like,
so
okay,
I'm usually doing it at the same time. I will be planning and plotting on the same days that I am writing something else. So I'll be working on one book that I am actively writing, and then I'll be plotting out another book. And usually it's going to be the sequel to whatever I'm writing on. So they sort of feed into each other. And a lot of that planning will happen at the gym. So maybe I'm standing on the treadmill, and I've got my smartphone out, and I'm tapping in little notes. Then when I get home, I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll drop that into the Scrivener file and append the information that I've written down to the outline. So my outlining process, I would say, is like 10 or 15 minutes a day, and it might take me between 5 and 10 days to plot out the initial outline for a book.
And you've mentioned Scrivener a couple of times. Do you use Scrivener for all your writing and all your plotting?
Religiously. Scrivener is amazing. I would categorize my writing life to, before and after Scrivener. Once you get past how daunting it can be because it has so many features, it's so powerful. It allows you to organize everything you would ever need, regardless of what type of novel you're writing. And most importantly, I think for a lot of people out there, you can export into any format. So you can create an EPUB, you can create a Mobi file, with very little work on your own. You don't need to hire somebody to do your formatting. You just spit out the book and upload it to whatever the outlet is.
Yeah, Scrivener is the only reason that I'm for the freaking Singularity, because I want to have Scrivener's babies.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. So as far as the word count goes, like if you are doing this every day, or and like you said, if you're averaging out to that 4,000, 5,000 range, you would end up with like some. Let me do the math here. Okay, it would be a little over 1,800,000 words coming off of 5K done every day, 365 days a year. So you coming on that 2 million mark. Now that's like 22 books or something like that, like 22 full-length novels. How much of that is actually novels versus rewrites and first drafts and second drafts and stuff like that?
I do 3 drafts per book, so what that's going to be in 2016 is at least 6 full-length novels and at least 6 nonfiction books. Nonfiction books are much shorter, typically like 20,000 words each, so I'm looking at probably 750 to 900,000 published words in 2016.
Wow. That's a lot of words. Yeah,
Now, here's what I find really funny. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Amanda Lee's work, but Amanda Lee will do triple what I do.
Really?
Yes. She writes 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, puts out 2 to 4 novels a month, and I'm talking full-length novels, under multiple pen names. She is a machine. So seeing that somebody like that exists really inspires me to hit things that I would have thought was impossible a year or two back.
Yeah, who is this Ubermensch?
She's a faceless entity from K-Boards and a few other writing boards that I belong to, who is very quiet, very humble, started out as a journalist, so she's used to writing a lot, and just started writing cozy mysteries on Amazon, and they sell like hotcakes.
Wow. That's a lot of words. It's an intimidating amount of words.
Yeah, that's And so really, what I'm hearing from you there, Chris, is that she just puts a lot more hours in the chair, because it sounds like you're writing for 2 or 3 hours a day, and she's doing 8 to 10.
Yeah, the most I can really sustain of just hard writing a day is 2 hours, and I think that it's possible to train yourself to write more. It's very much like a muscle, and the more you do it, the stronger it'll get. Which is why, getting back to people that haven't done this yet, why they should be encouraged. If you start with 5 minutes, in a month or two, you're going to find yourself working up to a half hour, then 45 minutes, then an hour. Maybe it'll be 3 20-minute sprints. Whatever works for you, that muscle's going to build. So if we're talking about some numbers that are just making you goggle, those are achievable for almost anyone if you put in the time and the effort.
So you almost sound like a trainer, because I mean that's pretty much the mantra that the trainers always give you. If you just start somewhere and build on it.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tony Robbins, but I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. And the book, The Lifelong Writing Habit, a lot of people have likened to, it's kind of like Tony Robbins for writers. I'm telling people, if 5,000 words per hour is the how you sit down and write, Lifelong Writing Habit is the get your ass in the chair and do it kind of book. And it's very encouraging, and it was written because the last chapter of 5,000 words per hour is on mindset, which doesn't sound like it would normally be in a book about writing faster, but mindset is everything in this industry. It's really hard to get up every day and do what we do and convince yourself that you're going to sit in front of a keyboard, make some stuff up, people are going to read it, like it, and pay us for it. So you kind of need that dose of positivity to keep doing it.
Yes.
Did you ever get discouraged starting out? Did you ever go the other way and had to pick yourself up or have somebody else help you out?
Oh, absolutely. I quit twice. So, and both times I quit for 5 years, where I would just get to a point where I'm no good. I'm never going to be able to master this. I don't know what to do next. And so I would just walk away and do something else. I'd play some video games for a few years.
Can always go to those video games.
Oh, hey, look, here comes World of Warcraft in 2005. I guess I'm going to take 5 years off.
Yep.
Nice.
What's this? Another Elder Scrolls?
Why don't you? Go ahead.
I was gonna say you mentioned dictating. How much do you utilize that as a tool to hit the high word counts?
Less than I used to. So where it was most handy for me, I would dictate directly into my iPhone, and then I would use Dragon to import that when I would get back to my computer. And I was doing it when I was standing at the bus stop going into the city. So I'd be at the bus stop for like 10 to 15 minutes and would just dictate a scene or two. And because human speech is way faster than typing, the typical person speaks 150 words a minute, it's really easy to get a lot of words once you get used to speaking your punctuation, which feels really, really weird at first.
Yes,
That's always
it
my
does.
problem. I tried.
I found that in advocating it to people, I've gotten 2 reactions from people, and they're diametrically opposed. People will try it and say there's no way I can ever do this, and no matter how hard I try, I can't make dictation work. And the people who try it and a light bulb comes on and they're like, oh my god, I can't imagine why I wasn't doing this years ago. But to the people who say that they can't do it, I tell a lot of them, it's cool. Find another way to write, because it feels so unnatural to them that they're just not able to do it, and they waste a lot of time trying to make it feel natural and then never get over that hurdle.
Yeah, I find that with myself and actually lots of other people I talk to, we get this kind of idea, okay, well, this is what we have to do, or this is what we should do, and then we try to make it work. And if it doesn't fit you, it doesn't fit you, right? I mean, that's
exactly. I mean, we're doing this because we love it. If it gets to a point where you're writing solely as a business and no longer because you enjoy it, we could get another type of job. The whole reason we do this is because we want to do what we love. And if you find that something just doesn't gel, then skip it and try another method.
Yeah, and that's just that. I think there's there might be those people that will see that how to write 5,000 words an hour and kind of think of it like, ooh, if X amount of hours, that many words, sock it up to Amazon, get rich scheme plan, brain algorithms, just like. So, I think there might be those people that would go that, but those people will immediately fall off, or otherwise that will trickle off slowly, because it's like you said, if you're not in it because you actually enjoy it, you could, if you want to make sense off of crappy books that you just schlock out, you can make the same amount, if not more, at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true that. Speaking though of a book that's not going to be crappy, you got a new book coming out, and it actually just happens to coincide with a really big release date, but we won't mention that. But I wanted to make sure we talk a little bit about that book, what it's about, and then also because you have a cool marketing plan and a pretty lofty goal. So I won't spoil that either. But tell us a little bit about your new book, Hero Born.
Okay, Hero Born is X-Files meets Heroes. So if you're a fan of either one of those shows, you should have some idea of what the book's about. Basically, aliens.
Sold.
Aliens have been experimenting on people, and our main character is given special abilities. Has no idea why they're giving people abilities or what their agenda is, and so through the course of this book, he needs to find out why this is happening. It's designed to be a series. Second book is already written. It's called Hero Rising, so I'll roll into that very quickly, and when I explain the launch plan, you'll see why. But Hero Born, interestingly, was originally titled Project Solaris, and I started doing a lot of market research and realized that if it doesn't have hero in the title, it's not going to sell nearly as well. And so the title was changed to sort of aim for the market that I wanted to hit. So there's a lot of arguments back and forth in the industry whether or not you should write to market. And I kind of fall middle of the way where I want to write what I want to write because I think these stories are interesting, but I do think you can make some changes to sort of massage what you're creating into a niche where people are going to find it and like it.
Okay, so how did you do that research? What was your way of going about that?
I started looking at every other book that involved superheroes or aliens, seeing which ones were selling the best and looking for commonalities. And I found Todd Hodges' The Never Hero is probably the best-selling superhero book in the last year and a half. It obviously has hero in the title. I saw Logan Rutherford's The Second Super. Didn't have hero in the title, but it had super, so I figured one or the other was going to be pretty critical. And I looked at other books and kind of came to that conclusion. And I also like the title.
Well, that helps too, yes. So, Chris, why don't you tell, what is your goal for the launch of this book?
Okay, so I'm going to back up a step and tell you about how I launched my original series and what didn't work and why that's going to influence what I'm doing now. And just to kind of salt it a little bit, I'll give you that goal that we were talking about before the show started. I want to launch this book into the Amazon Top 100, which is a really bold, ambitious claim, I think, but something that might be achievable. So everything that I'm doing is geared at making that happen. Part of that was the title that I wrote. And it differs from the original books that I put out. So my first book was called No Such Thing as Werewolves, which I think is an amusing title, but was very polarizing. If you were into werewolves, you might have picked up the book, and if you weren't, you just, you didn't give it a second look. So it did well. It launched at about 4,000 in the Amazon store, and it stayed there for probably, 4 or 5 months. To date, the Deathless series has sold almost 30,000 copies, so it's done well in its first year. But I think that a more targeted launch can do much, much better. And the biggest thing that I failed at was staggering my releases too far apart. So I waited 6 months to put out No Mere Zombie, that was the second book, and then another 6 months to put out Vampires Don't Sparkle. And readers have very, very short attention spans, and Amazon's algorithms have an even shorter attention span. If you're not putting out a sequel within 90 days, you've got problems. And the faster you can do it, the better. So with this series, Hero Born comes out on December 18th, same day as Star Wars. The sequel, Hero Rising, comes out on February 18th, exactly 2 months later. And the third book will be releasing 2 months after that on April 18th. So every 60 days, I'm releasing a new title. And the way my promotions are going to be staggered is aimed at discounting the previous book right before the next one launches. And I've seen people do this with enormous success. Wayne Stinnett, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, has done this repeatedly. He's all over Kboards. And he, I think in the last 30 days, has earned something like at least $1,000 every single day. which was a huge milestone for him, following this methodology. And I think that if you can write a series that does the same thing, you can really capitalize on that strategy.
Interesting. So you have all 3 books pre-written, or are you still in the midst of writing them and just giving yourself these deadlines?
The first book is complete and ready to go. The second book, I have a draft of it written. I just finished it yesterday. It's going to need a lot of work to get it ready for that February 18th release, so I still need 2 full rewrites on that manuscript to get it ready. And the third one has not been written at all.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is, but I am 100% certain that I can get this done, and I'm certain because I've plotted all 3 of these books out. I know exactly what it is that I'm going to write. I love the characters. I love the setting. I've gotten very adept at cutting away the fat from a book, so these are shorter books. My first book was 130,000 words. Hero Born is 55,000. Hero Rising is only 60. So shorter books are much easier for me to plot and much faster to write.
Do you think that's also a part of the market appeal, though? Do you think shorter books are better for market, too?
I think it depends on the genre. If you are going for epic fantasy, they want as long as you can possibly write. 500,000-word books are just fine. If you're hitting thrillers or romance or sci-fi, people are okay with shorter books, and in some instances definitely prefer them.
Yeah, epic fantasy definitely falls on that spectrum of large or don't bother, or like unless you're doing something like The Hobbit. Like if you're doing a short story or a novella that eventually will lead into a giant epic, that's a good good taster. If you think back in the day. Tolkien released The Hobbit, and then he puts out this giant opus that he had been working on for about freaking 30 years or whatever.
Right, and I still think that's somewhat true today. If you are leading into a longer series in fantasy, you can get away with it, or if you're releasing very, very quickly. So if you put out, let's say, 75,000-word books, they're all great, they all have a beginning, middle, and end, and they all lead immediately into the next one, you could probably get some fans. Dresden Files are 80 to 100,000 words.
Yeah. And likewise, that's that kind of release schedule Jim Butcher definitely adheres to as well. He is constantly getting another Dresden book out. Go ahead, bud.
Okay, have you looked into pricing much, Chris? Have you been playing with price points at all? I mean, obviously you're saying put them on sale before you release the next one, but how about just in general for pricing?
I have. So your first book, if you're going to be releasing on Amazon, should be $2.99 or lower. $2.99 is obviously the sweet spot because that's where you first get 70%. That's assuming that you're in Kindle Unlimited, because people who don't want to pay that $2.99 are probably going to be willing to do Kindle Unlimited if they have it. You may lose a few sales, but you're making far, far more profit than if you went the straight 99-cent route. So I think $2.99 for an intro price, and then $3.99 for follow-up books. The thought being, if somebody really liked your first book, they're not going to shirk at that extra $1 to get into the next book.
And then do you do a lot of sales, seasonal sales, things like that? Or have you had a chance to try any of that type of stuff?
I do. I've done a whole bunch of promotions. So I was very fortunate in that Apple approached me on my first series. So in April, I went wide. So I'm all over the place. Any outlet that will take my books, I'm there. But my 2 most successful by far are Apple and Amazon, and I've done promos at both of them. Promos are amazing for getting your attention deeper into the series. So either going perma-free on your first book or discounting it periodically to 99 cents for, let's say, a Kindle Countdown deal is really successful if you hit the right outlets. So some of the booksellers aren't going to get you any traction at all, but if you hit ones like ENT or, if you're lucky, BookBub, you're going to see massive traction. And most importantly, if you set up your books right, you're going to get a ton of email list subscribers in the process.
How important to you? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Liam.
No, how important to you is your list? We have different authors on. Like some people their list is everything. Some they're like, well, a list? What? How much is the list important to you?
Your list is absolutely vital. Anybody who's telling you what, they're clearly high.
What?
You
No.
have a mailing list, and I'll tell you why. I mean, I spout off about this all the time. The landscape in publishing is going to look radically different in 5 years. You're going to see fewer outlets. You're going to see tighter competition, both from there being more authors and there being more subscription services that are paying less for your books. Your power to sell books going forward is all about who you can reach. You need to be able to email a group of rabid fans and say, hey, I've got this next book. Do you want to buy it at full price? And if you can do that, you're still going to make money. And every time I release a book, I have a larger list, and it does far better than the one before. So my list hit 4 figures about 6 months ago. I'm just crossing the 2,000 people mark, and I'm really thinking that's going to be the first thing that propels Heroborn up in the algorithms. So being a computer programmer, the way the algorithms work is you need a sustained initial spike. So over a period of at least 4 days, you need to hit as many numbers as possible, and I'm going to ramp up in such a way that the first day will be at least 100 sales, the second day should be 150 to 200, and it's going to keep rising from there. And after the 4th day, Amazon will take over. They'll say, hey, people are buying this book, let's get it in front of as many people as possible. And when they do that, if you have a great blurb and a great cover, people are going to start buying it, and that's where you get the chance to become the next, Atlantis Gene or the Martian. I mean, it's not going to happen for everybody, but if you want a chance at that, you've got to have that initial spike, and your mailing list is what makes that happen.
Cool. Question from Krishan. I'll see how I can phrase this. She asks, "Are you writing a series because of the natural story arc, or is this a marketing plan?" So I guess how much of the is it more about the the love of the story that drives you to write the novel, or does that kind of marketing ahead of time thought creating and designing something specifically for the audience, how much is it for the love versus trying to appeal to the audience in your case?
For me, it's all about the love. I need to be able to tell the stories I want to tell, and I have a very difficult time with brevity. Writing a trilogy would be extremely difficult for me. I like long, epic series where the characters grow and change over time, and I just happen to be very fortunate that lends itself well to marketing because people like to read long series. I mean, it's just like TV shows. Firefly was great, but it ended really quickly. How awesome would it have been if it just kept going and they kept putting out more seasons? I want to do the same thing with books.
You had to bring up Firefly. Another question from Krishan. When did you decide to go wide, and when would you suggest other writers go wide? Because a lot of people, they're really religious to their KDP.
There may not ever be a right time to go wide. You're going to have to make that choice, I think, as each individual author. For me, it came in April because Apple reached out directly to me and said, hey, what's it going to take to get your books on iBooks? So I met with the iBooks team at the Apple campus because I'm not too far from there. They seemed really cool. And since then, they have done banner ads for every one of my books. They do all sorts of fun promotions. They approached me about setting up a zombie book promo for Halloween and let me get a bunch of indie authors, and all our books were showcased. So I got that enormous support from my rep at Apple. Without that, I heard crickets at all the other retailers. I haven't sold, really anything at Kobo or Google or Barnes & Noble, not enough to matter at all. So if not for Apple, I'd still be exclusive with Amazon.
Yeah, I think that tends to be what I've been hearing a lot lately, or at least to those that go wide. It tends to be Apple as the reason that they go, and for that reason that either they've been contacted or they contact an Apple rep, and you end up kind of forging a natural, person-to-person relationship rather than this kind of the Amazon thing where you're kind of just being responded to. Customer support or whatever, it's kind of you're in this queue.
If you are fortunate enough to be in that position where you end up getting an Apple rep, the right time for you to go wide is when you see sales starting to sag on Amazon, and it will happen. You'll slide down the ranks. KU will do less and less for you. When you get to a point where you're no longer happy with sales, that's where I pull the plug. So Heroborn and the sequels are going to debut in Kindle Unlimited because it's the only way for you to get the algorithms really rolling in your favor. But when I get to a point probably after 2 to 3 terms where they start plummeting, that's when I'll take those wide.
Okay, and with your relationship with Apple, you're okay with with going to Amazon exclusively? You don't think they'll be angry with you for that, I guess?
No, I have a great relationship. I'm totally honest with them about everything. And they understand why that's done. A lot of authors do that. They're eager to get as many books on their platform as they can, obviously, and they're willing to work with you to do so. But it's really hard when Amazon can sell 4 to 6 times as many books and over a more sustained period of time. When the promos for me end at Apple, my sales typically slow to a trickle.
Okay, that's interesting. One thing that you had touched on, I made a little note, and I wanted to get back to before we run out of time. You mentioned an app. You have an actual app that goes around with your 5,000 word book. Is that right, or did I catch
I do. The app came to me before the book. So before I had written any part of the book, I made myself an iPhone app. I mean, I'm an iPhone developer. It's what I do for a day job. And really, it's very straightforward. It allows you to track writing sprints. So you start a timer. At the end of the timer, you put in the number of words that you wrote. It appends it to whatever project that you're working on and tells you how many hours you have left to finish that. So if you're writing a 60,000 word book, it'll say, okay, you're currently writing at 2,200 words an hour, and it's going to take you 12 and a half more hours to finish this book.
And you developed that just for tracking or motivation as well, or?
Both. I'm a huge numbers geek. I love spreadsheets. I love knowing as much about what I'm doing as possible. I think that anything that can be tracked can be improved, but the opposite is not true. If you're not tracking it, it's really hard to improve just because you don't know where you are. So the app really served as a tool for me to track where I was and improve.
Now, is that app free, or does it cost money? Can we all find it?
You can all find it. It is free. Just search for 5,000 words per hour on iTunes, and you will find the app. There is a premium version of it. I'd encourage you not to purchase the premium version of it until you've used the regular version for a while and decided you like it. It's not perfect. It's a garage app I do in my spare time, so don't think it's going to be like, EA created this wonderful, beautiful app. But it gets the job done, that's for sure.
Cool.
Well, and I like what you had said in your book, how it just kind of it goes towards your next cup of coffee.
Yes. The app does not make me very much money at all. I make probably a couple $100 a month, which I'll take it. But the book took me 20 plus hours to write, edit, and get out there. The app took probably 250 and has made a tiny fraction of the money the book has.
Return on the investment there, not so good, but
yeah, I did it kind of as a favor. It's gotten mixed reviews in the community. There's been a couple of people on Kboards especially that have come out and just lashed into the app about how terrible it is, and they found a couple bugs with it. And I was tempted to pull it for a while, but the vast majority of people seem to enjoy it. And it's, even if you pay for it, it's only $2.99. But I encourage you again just to use the free version, and hopefully it's useful for you.
Yeah, man, you got to put on some armor before you go to Kboards.
I was getting message on Facebook, hey, have you seen the threads they're putting about you?
They're talking about me? Oh, no. Yeah, the only thing that would be worse is if you're mentioned on Reddit.
I've had that happen as well.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow. You're really famous, though, when you get mentioned there.
Yeah, I guess that's a sign I'm making it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you talked about having a lot more nonfiction books coming out this next year as well. So what's some other nonfiction books you're going to be working on?
So the next 3 in order are Smart Plotting, which will show somebody step by step how to plot a fiction novel, regardless of genre, in the minimum amount of time in such a way that you can then turn around and write it very quickly. The one after that is called Smart Self-Editing, and this is the one that I think will be the most popular. I get requests for this constantly. It's how you do one-pass editing. So when I write a draft of a book, I don't stop and edit at all. I write the entire first draft, and then I go back and I do one pass to edit it, and this book will explain to you how I do that.
So, and then do you send to a professional editor after that?
I send it to 3 professional editors. So my first one is a developmental editor, and she shreds it and tells me how terrible it is. And then I go back and I do another rewrite, and I hand it off to a line editor who will also do some light developmental edits. Her job primarily is to fix the wording and sentence structure and look for typos, but she'll also say, hey, this part doesn't make any sense, you got to fix it. and then I send it to a proofreader who will, kind of fine-tune the last little bits of it.
Wow, that's pretty extensive. And you had to buck up for that too. I mean, to start off when you're first starting off with the 3 editors, that's pretty costly.
My first book did not have 3 editors; it had 1, and to this day, no such thing as Werewolves probably has, I don't know, 30 or 40 typos in it. People have been very forgiving. It's never been mentioned in a review, but people have messaged me privately to say, "Hey, did you know that there are typos in here?" And that's because I only had the 1 editor. So after I put that book out, I started revising my process, and these days I shell out between $2,000 and $3,000, depending on the length of the manuscript, to get it edited.
Investments.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is ultimately a business.
That's right. It does cost money to do business. I lost track of my questions. One of you guys go. I gotta look here.
It costs money to do business. Brain algorithms.
Brain algorithm.
Let's see. So, yes. I like this question that Eric had left behind as a joke. Now, Chris, with all that you've done, can you help Wade?
Emotionally, I'm not sure that's possible.
Can you help Wade write more?
I can't, but you know what? Wade can. So he could take an hour and a half and read 5,000 words per hour, and then just for one day try doing what it says, and then decide whether or not it'll work for him. And I'm willing to bet you $20, which I will PayPal you, Wade, that'll increase your daily word count.
Okay, I'll take that challenge. I was going to buy the book anyway, so what the heck?
I'll send you a free copy, and you could lie. You could just say, nope, didn't work for me, send me my $20, and I will send you $20.
You heard it, folks. $20. It's on the line.
Nice. I knew you were going to give me the punching bag there, Xavier. I felt that coming.
Hey, no, blame Erica. Just
even when she's not here, she's giving me.
Yeah, yell at New Zealand.
Erica cracks me up.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about the lifelong writing habit. Besides the starting point, I wanted to talk a little more about the longevity, because it does seem like a lot of writers fall off at some point. And you did mention, I can't remember if it was in the pre-show or not, but about burning out at some point. What do you do to keep yourself fresh? And do you have some chapters in the lifelong about that?
I do. It's really important that you take breaks, and not just any breaks. You need to take breaks to do the things that are going to recharge you. So, sure, getting a great night's sleep is important, but what is just as important is playing Fallout 4. And I'm dead serious about that. It's watching the new Star Wars movie when it comes out. It is getting together over beer and pretzels and playing D&D with your college buddies. You need to find the creative outlets that'll recharge you, and what you'll find is things will begin to percolate, and that's going to trickle back into your writing. If you become a machine and all you do is write, and you don't have those creative outlets that make this fun and give you the ideas that fuel your writing, you will burn out.
Good advice.
Role-playing games like D&D are definitely good for that. I walked away from a campaign that I played with some friends, and immediately had a story idea in the back of my head for an entire series. Just like, all right, well, that came out of a 4-hour venture of just five nerds eating pretzels, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I've got at least three books plotted,
Mm-hmm.
just from hanging out with some friends.
Chris Sean says Fallout 4 cures all ails. She wants to know about your build.
I went primarily a stealth build. I took pistols as my specialization, so I could sneak attack people from extreme range, and you could just one-shot them because they had no idea that you were there. So I've already beaten the game because, I mean, you were sneak attacking helicopters with your alien laser pistol, just blowing them out of the sky. But yeah, it was a great game.
What a great game.
And I found how to win.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Liam, did you have any more questions? Make sure I get you all. Hey, and also on the site, anybody have more questions? Make sure you pop them up there. We're getting low on time.
Yeah,
5
we
minutes.
covered what I had.
Oh, yeah. So on that one day off that you grant yourself now, each week, how do you spend that time away from the keyboard?
I will play video games. I'll go hiking. I will hang out with friends. And even on the days that I write, because I'm only writing 2 hours a day, like Saturday, I'll spend the rest of the day gaming with friends. I just got involved in a new Pathfinder campaign. So that's, my weekends are pretty free. I write for about 2 hours on Saturday morning, and I have Sunday off. So the rest of my weekend is whatever I feel like doing.
Do you ever miss during the week? I mean, are you as faithful to it as you preach?
I missed a day this week, and I wanted to kill myself, and I know that sounds terrible, but I had the flu, and I just couldn't do it. I missed the gym. I didn't write that day. I was just a mess. And the next day of the flu, I probably only did 2,000 words, and then today was the first day I was back at it for a full session.
Even good writers get sick now and then, Chris. It's okay.
I have really, really high expectations for myself, probably higher than I should. And that's been good in a lot of ways, but it's also kind of a curse because I have a really hard time relaxing.
Oh, relax. Don't you hate it when someone says, "Hey, why don't you just relax?"
Oh yeah, that makes me twitch.
Yeah. It's kind of like an oxymoron in a weird way. If I could relax, I probably wouldn't need you to tell me to relax.
Exactly.
You probably wouldn't feel the need to tell me to relax if I was relaxed.
So what I'm getting from that X is you're not relaxed.
Oh no, anxiety rules my world. That's why I do write when I need to, and it you have to have that motivation, just like in the back of your head, just like as much as there is a line between writer's anxiety versus actual work ethic. You do have to have that little voice in the back of your head, kind of egging you on. It shouldn't be too depressing. You can't be beating yourself up, but at the same time, you do have to have that balance between motivating and encouraging.
Yeah, to that end, and this is something a lifelong writing habit goes into very deeply, you have to get rid of the great lie, which is that wonderful writers are born, not made. That's not true. We all suck really, really badly when we first start doing this, and it takes a long time to get good. Ira Glass has some great quotes about that, which I use in the book. If you want to be a writer, you have to give yourself permission to suck at first. And I think why so many of us quit and say, you know what, we can't do this is you have taste, you know that books that you love are great, and you kind of know why they're great, but then you try writing something and it's terrible, and you can't even get your best friend to read it. So to people that are in that stage right now that are listening, you can get through it. Find some books on craft, read them, practice, do it in the privacy of your own home. You don't have to show it to anybody if you don't want to. If you put in enough time and you do the work, you will be able to crank out novels that people will love.
And until then, Pathfinder campaigns.
Lots of Pathfinder campaigns.
Yeah, I call dibs on Druid.
Well, I love that. That's great. That's a great piece of advice at the end of that. It actually nails it, I think. So, and we are at the top of the hour. So, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, and you have some wonderful insight. And maybe as you get some more releases out, we could have you back if you so wish. So.
Yeah, I'd love to be back on anytime. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. We do have a tradition of a little after party at this thing we call Self-Publishing Roundtable. So if you want to stick around for that, if you got a few more minutes,
I'm game.
We'll have a few people pop on and that sort of thing. I'll also remind everybody, please give us a review, just if you haven't yet. Just take a moment. 5 stars, of course. We love those, and share us around all of the internets, if you would. And also, it's the season of giving. We have a little donate button on our site now, so to help us
deck our halls.
Help us deck our halls. I like it.
Our halls are in need of decking.
They are in need of decking. So, Yes, and we have a guest lined up for next week too. We're getting more professional. We got more content on the site. Check out selfpublishingroundtable.com, of course, and stay up with the blog and all that good stuff. So thanks to all the live listeners, and Chris, again, thank you. It was really, really good talking to you. Xavier, you got anything to say?
Adios, internets.